Good evening, everybody. We're just going to allow people to join the session with us now. So we're just going to give it about 30 seconds to 45 seconds for everybody to join. But thank you very much for joining us. Okay, I think it's time to get started. Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to another AERO South Africa webinar in conjunction with Safety First Aviator. Tonight, we're going to be talking about spring flying, dust off the rust. My name is Neil Piper, the head of content for Messi Frankfurt, South Africa, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Annelie Reynolds. Annelie is a portfolio director of Messi Frankfurt, South Africa. She's also the show director of AERO South Africa. Annelie, I know that you've got good news to share, so over to you.
Thanks, Neil. And as always, thank you for introducing me and for your kind words. Thank you to all our AERO and Safety First Aviator supporters and everyone joining us for the first time tonight. We have been running this series of webinars for more than a year now, and we are always so appreciative of all the feedback we get from our attendees. Please do make use of the Q&A box tonight if you have questions for our experts. So, COVID, what can I say? It has changed so much in our day-to-day lives, activities, and the way we do business. But, as Neil says, I believe there's always a silver lining to every dark cloud. We are hosting, in person, a business-to-business AERO South Africa, yay, the second edition, at Wonderboom National Airport from the 7th to the 9th of July 2022, and I cannot wait to see everybody face-to-face again. Now for tonight's webinar. As Neil said, it's spring, and spring has officially sprung. The change of season brings along the responsibility of dusting off the rust and to do some spring cleaning. Tonight, we have three familiar faces with us, and they will be sharing such valuable information with regards to the change of season and weather patterns. Our moderator for the evening will give more information, but as a quick summary, on the lineup, we have Caroline Cole, owner of the Essential Pilot, looking at what you should do to get back into the spring of things, excuse the pun. That is, if you haven't flown in a while. The pre-flight check will be the main focus for Kobus Turin, representing ALPA SA. To the end of the webinar, our dearest Saintjie White, our resident search and rescue expert, will guide you on when to ask for help and where to get it. Basically, putting your minds at ease and keep you safe. So, as I cannot wait to listen to our experts, I'm handing back to Neil to introduce our charming moderator, Kobus Turin.
Annelie, well done. Thank you very much for that. And there are our panelists, but we're going to get to them now. But the agenda for tonight, that is the agenda. And let me introduce Kobus to you guys. I think it's really fitting that Kobus is moderating the session tonight. And Kobus doesn't really need much of an introduction, as he is so well known and respected. However, you need to indulge me as I shine a light on the career of the man, and it's not a myth. Kobus first joined the Air Force in 1974 and completed training on Harvard, Impalas, and has a BML degree, completed operational flying tours at 8 Squadron and 3 Squadron, with a total of 168 combat missions and the Air Force Cross. He qualified in aviation safety, aircraft accident investigation, pilot and pilot attack instructor, and completed the senior command and staff course to become the officer commanding 2 Squadron, the Flying Cheetahs. He completed his Air Force career as a colonel with a total of 4,500 hours, of which 2,000 were on supersonic types. Cobus joined South African Airways in 1999 as an accident investigator before being appointed as the flight safety manager and as CRM facilitator. In 2004, he commenced flying on the Boeing 738, Airbus 330, 340 until his retirement in February 2019. And he didn't stop there. He wanted to give back. When he stopped, he had a total of over 12,000 flying hours. He then joined the Airline Pilots Association in 2015 as the chairman of the Accident Analysis and Prevention Committee, and since 2019 as the technical director, representing ALPA on the National Safety First Aviator campaign since 2016, whilst also freelancing as an aviation safety, SMS, CRM facilitator and advisor. Cobus, it's always such a pleasure to be part of these sessions with you. It's our honor, and it's a pleasure to welcome and introduce you now. So over to you, Cobus.
Oh, thank you, Neil. That introduction is longer than my speech tonight. But, yeah, that does give away my age as well. But thank you very much, and thanks for having us again. So everybody, welcome. So nice to have you with us. My name is Cobus, broadcasting live from LM. Now, unfortunately, it's not Lorenzo Marx, but from just Lekker. Nice to have you guys with us. Frans Smith, who's our usual moderator, cannot attend tonight, so I'll try and do my best to fill the gap. We're also missing our weather lady, Lauren. She's busy with a weather thesis. I hope she's not kicking up more cold fronts. And then, of course, the Mayday Buff and Ari, who's also not with us tonight. But some changes in the routine is always a good thing, I hope. We'll see how it goes tonight. But first, let me just, this was written. It's not, I didn't realize we were going to have such a long intro, but allow me to thank Annelie and Neil at AERO Messi Frankfurt. And it's not Messi Schmidt, and it's not Frankfurt in Germany, for their unwavering support. They've always been such kind hosts for us since, December last year. Like you said, almost a year. So it's an absolute pleasure working with you guys. I always enjoy it. We have fun and laughs. Things don't always go right behind the scenes, but it always get sorted out somehow along the way. So thank you to EAA for their support. Rob, Honker, and now Walter has joined us as well. So thank you very much. Just wanted to say thank you. And then also for we try and have a different theme every month. And I've asked Caroline, please, can you come up with a theme? She came up with this one: springtime, how do we approach our flying? Great stuff. After we last month had that, what do we do? What do we think before we go and fly? Just putting it out there. Next year we have to have a total new theme. This year our main theme is prop clear because we went back flying from COVID. Annelie alluded to that. So yeah, you guys ain't got any ideas? There's no payment in it, but anyway. And thanks also for all the work. I forgot to mention, all this what we do and what they do for us is without any payment. It's mahala, and it's just the passion of purpose separates the shakers and doers from the shaken and serve, because we love safety, we love flying. So I love this. Spring has officially arrived and it's time to dust off the winter rust. And then before flying aircraft, spring has sprung. Thanks, Annelie. And I think Caroline Kroll went even further, and Caroline Kroll, no further introduction, you know well as well, from Essential Pilot, and she will look after what you should do to get back into the spring of things. Wow, it's nice to work with the girls. They come up with all these funny things. So especially if you haven't flown in a while, if you were lucky to go back flying, maybe you can add some ideas, tips, pointers for us as well. Our person will touch on some aspects with respect to springtime for a pre-flight, sharing tips, but I would love you to also use the chat or the Q&A. There's already 6 chats and Q&A, we're getting there, to help us, because we don't know everything. Neil, thanks. The word expert, I always said the expert's a jack of all trades and a master of none, but nonetheless, it's better than just nobody. So, and then the best for last is Liva Haxi Sankey. And please take note, she's now a resident ICAO S&R expert, not SARS, S&R, search and rescue, still S&R. She will guide you to when ask for help and then where to get it. And trust me, she knows. In the meantime, please use the chat box. love the coming through, and we'll make the best time we can to also answer each and every one the questions or especially your tips, because we don't know everything. So Caroline, over to you in your studio at home. Thanks, Neil.
Yes, thanks, Cobus. It's really a pleasure always to do this. People that know me know my absolute passion for this. And yeah, tonight we came up with the idea of dusting off the rust, because there's a number of reasons why people don't fly, you know, and it's perfectly understandable. Personal commitments, the winter weather, for example, in the Cape, in Joburg, we've had really terrible winds, financial reasons. So the main point I want to just get across is nobody's judging you for not having flown or not being current, but I just want to give you a couple of tips or things to think about when you want to get back into flying again. So you need to be honest with yourself as to how long it's been since you've done some serious flying. And often we think, oh, it was just yesterday. And when you look at your logbook, you realize, well, actually, it was 3 months ago, or it was 5 months ago. So you really need to make an honest assessment of when last you flew. The regulations obviously guide the minimums in relation to that. So we know that we need to do a revalidation check. Well, if you've got a PPL, every 12 months from the date, every 12 months. And that also we need to, within 90 days immediately preceding, we need to have taken at least 3 takeoffs and landings in the same class, or if it's a type rating, type or variant of the aeroplane. So these are just what is required by law, but it doesn't mean that we should be governed by this. So a couple of hours training every 2 years might satisfy the regulations, but do you satisfy your own standards of excellence? That is what you need to consider. Rather than accept your deteriorated state, take some steps to brush up on all your piloting skills when you get back into the air after a long layoff. And all your piloting skills, I'm going to show you what those are. It's not just stick and rudder. So I'm going to just give you 5 little tips. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's going to get you thinking about stuff you should think about when you haven't flown for a while. So the first one is airspeed control. Poor management of your aircraft's energy can be deadly. So if you're not paying attention to your airspeed and the control of that aircraft's energy, it can have deadly results. Revise all your principal operational airspeeds for your aircraft. That's something, you know, especially if you're doing a hire and fly and you fly a number of different airplanes, make sure you take the POH for that aircraft out and check those speeds. Also pay attention to the limiting speeds, such as your flap and your gear extension speeds as well, because that's often one we forget about. You can't, oh, what was that again? You might remember your VX, VY, but you can't remember the flap extension speed. Also remember that pitch changes will result in speed changes. So very often when you haven't flown for a while, you'll find that you might be over controlling, you know, pitching here, pitching there, power changes here, power changes there, and forgetting about the trim. So pay particular attention to setting up your aircraft correctly for the speeds and the power as well, to maintain that altitude as well. And don't forget to trim. You don't want to be fighting your aircraft the whole time. Number 2. So number 2 is emergencies. This one I feel quite strongly about because often it's not rehearsed. So first step I would revise is all your memory emergency procedures for your particular aircraft that you're going to be flying. The other thing that I like to do is before we go on any flight, or if I take a student, before every lesson, while we're waiting for the oil temperature to go up, we practice one emergency by means of touch. So, for example, if we have an electrical fire, we will actually practice touching the various controls and switches that we would use in the case of an electrical fire. I find that if you do one of these before every flight, eventually you will know those critical emergencies well. It's good practice, and instead of just reading it off a list, it gives you that hand-eye muscle memory as well. So really consider doing that. Then also your rejected takeoff brief. This is something you should do just before entering the runway. Make sure that you rehearse what you're going to do if there's an abnormality before rotation and after rotation with sufficient or insufficient runway. Also plan your engine failure after takeoff beforehand, especially if you maybe at a different airport. Always have a look at your Google Earth picture, already assess, should I have an engine failure after takeoff, where am I going to go? I think that's really important to have a pre-planned idea of where I'm going to go. It doesn't help getting up into the air and then deciding, oh, okay, well, maybe there or there. You've got the opportunity nowadays to actually check from Google Earth what it looks like, find a place or a couple of places that you have in mind beforehand. Briefing passengers. This is not just passengers, actually, it's crew as well. So if you are two pilots flying together, I would still, you need to brief between the two of you. Things such as looking out, encourage all your passengers to look out and say, you know, if you see something like, see if you can see an aeroplane. Brief them on emergencies and what you will do in the case of an emergency. And also the go-around procedure. So remember that we don't want to surprise passengers with the go-around, and if they're informed of it, there's more chance that you yourself will execute a go-around if they are informed ahead of time. Remember that panicked passengers can actually increase your stress load. So already you're preventing panic in the case of an emergency. Just some ideas of maneuvers you might want to brush up on if you haven't flown recently. List is not exhaustive, but just some suggestions. You might want to practice stalls, precautionary landings, engine fires, the lost procedure, and calling for help. And Sankey is going to go a bit into when to ask for help as well. Diversions, engine failure after takeoff, a radio failure, and also gliding from different heights. So how far can you glide in your aeroplane? Crosswind landings and go around, things that you should practice. And I recommend, you know, if you haven't flown for a while, pick an instructor and just go for a flight to practice a couple of these things. Remember that more practice means more conditioning for unusual situations, which means being safer when and if the time comes. So the more you practice these things, the safer you will be. Third, airports. So just some things to revise. Revise your airspaces. So you need to know what Class C is, what an ATZ is. I won't go into those details, but I'm just telling you to revise those and know what each airspace means, so that if you're flying and you find yourself in one of these airspaces, what it actually means for you. So typical examples here, just to show you what it would look like. Remember to check what services are offered in each type of airspace as well. If you're getting separation, or if you're just getting traffic information, and to which type of aircraft, depending on the flight rules, will receive information, advice, or separation. That's pretty important. Remember that you always need to request permission before entering controlled airspace. It doesn't mean then also that you just request permission to enter. You also need to wait for clearance. You may not enter that airspace unless you have received clearance to do so. Airspaces, study the airspace that you're going to enter. get a picture of how the arrival will work, all of these things. So study your maps, look at the airspace. Airport markings and signals. So here's my little quiz for you to enter in the chat box down below. Let's see if anybody can get, what do these markings and signals mean? So we have A, B, and C. So if you thought you weren't rusty, I'm putting the challenge out there for you. So have a look at those and you can put them in the comments below. Traffic patterns. Traffic patterns, always study the traffic pattern for your departure, your destination, and your alternates. You need to know the circuit patterns. Radio procedures. So we'd like to eventually do another talk on this later. But for now, when in doubt, remember the 4 W's. Who am I speaking to? Who am I? Where am I? And what do I want to do? Remember those. And you're already a good way there. Fourthly, weather. So this is normally Lauren's domain, but just some suggestions. Review your VFR net minima. That's something that people easily forget. Cloud-based, just one of my suggestions is actually know how to work out your cloud base. So by finding the difference between your maximum temperature and your dew point, multiplying by 410, you can actually work out what is the convective cloud base. So you can actually, you don't need to eyeball it, you can actually get a much more accurate figure as to how low those clouds are. So that's a formula that I use that I find quite useful. The windsock, okay, we're not going to go back to the windsock, but for those of you that missed it, always look at your windsock and know how to interpret a windsock, especially in the case of crosswinds. METARs and TAFs, I won't go into the explanation of those, just a couple of things you should look out for. The temperature and the dew point, the closer those are, the more likely you are to get to high relative humidity where the likelihood of cloud formation will occur. So closer those two are, pay attention. Pressure, if you see decreasing pressure, that could indicate convective activity. Rising air, also an indicator of cloud and convection. Becoming, so that's an expected permanent change that will occur. And temporary, that is normally just a temporary change that's going to last less than 1 hour. So if you ever wonder what temporary is, it might be worth your while just to stay on the ground because it's less than 1 hour. It could be just a passing storm, something like that. Okay, and then the last one is aeronautical decision making. So a lot of accidents usually include some of these factors. So attempting to squeeze too much utility out of your aircraft. So it doesn't mean because somebody in another aircraft can do something that you in your aircraft can do. Which brings me to the second point, is actually pushing the limits of your pilot skill. Trying to have too much fun, buzzing or improper aerobatics, don't even try it. Rather go for lessons and get properly trained to do these things. But don't attempt things that are out of your aircraft's ability and out of your aircraft, your personal ability. Good decision making. So most good decisions are made on the ground. So if there's any little doubt when you're on the ground, believe me, it's far better to just take that decision and stay on the ground. Once in the air, from there on, you have to follow a continuous decision-making process. How do we do that? Anticipate what could go wrong, recognize, pay attention, and recognize a problem. Act, evaluate your options and choose one. So something like this, continue, keeping a close eye on the problem. Continue the flight, but divert from the plan. So maybe land somewhere closer. or if the problem is really serious, get the aircraft on the ground. And then finally, evaluate. Are you getting the desired results to address your problem? Okay, and that's me for today. If anybody out there, especially in the Joburg area, if you want to brush up on your skills, you're more than welcome to come fly with me. We're at JFA. You can contact me and we'll even give you a discount. And like I said, I'm always a willing seat cover. I don't judge. I'm there to help. Okay, Kobus, that's me.
Caroline, thanks so much. May I be first, please? I know you're second, although she might be second. First, and I'll go second. But thanks so much.
We're threatening to take Annelie flying.
Yeah, we have to. We really have to. And no rolling and no spinning. Right. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks so much. Unfortunately, we're taping this to present to you later on because there's so much good information. Just run through the comments so far. I see a hi from Jaco van der Westhuizen. And Jaco, from this panel as well, welcome with your appointment as now the CEO of Mayday SA. So nice to have you. Well, you've been on board for a long time now, you're the CEO as well. So great stuff. Carl, thanks for mentioning it. Today is spring equinox, officially spring. I think that's, Carl, that's why Annelie chose this day. But I might be wrong. We know women know more than what we know. Thanks for that. Just very quick, what I've seen is picked up as well when the questions came through. The I had B's go to gym there, Caroline. Is that wrong? Remember your A, B, and C. Yeah. He said C's means turn to face me. And then Martin Upel says, he's actually got all the lot of answers. Take caution when on the maneuvering area. That is A, that's a red flag. I know the diving looks like a diving flag, but it's also what it means. Takeoff and landings are restricted to runways only, which is B. And then Seth also asking, some airports don't have windsocks. Good point, Seth. I always say, I was always taught, remember, if they don't have windsocks, they might have trees and smoke and things. So yeah, good point. Well, I think after the windsock joke that we're having here between us, Carol will make sure that all the airports will eventually get those windsocks. Thanks, Caroline. Then Manu also mentioned C that you had, Caroline, and just turn to the pilot's left, which is amazing.
Yes.
I didn't.
Yeah, just so.
Sorry?
I didn't remember them either. So looking at them, I also had to brush up. So I picked up those that I couldn't get.
Well, that's great. That's what we're here for. I mean, experts doesn't know the word. Thanks, Neil. Doesn't mean we know everything, but we know people who know everything. No, that's a good point. Carl also said, beware of windsocks that are not as per the specs of the diagram shown. So yes, it can indicate very different strength winds. Yes. That's it's like a newspaper, you read it. If you don't read it, you're not informed, you read it, you're misinformed. Windsocks can be the same. Seth also said, the Joburg area, my dream to Well, he says, my dream job to be a pilot. Seth, you got Caroline's numbers there, and she'll take you, I'm sure she'll take you up on the offer. Just something okay, thanks. When you mentioned that briefing to packs, when they start yelling and stuff, I saw a helmet, but I think it's in a chopper. It's appropriate. It says here, a stick on the back, don't scream, I'm scared too. So maybe use those things. Good tips that we have here. Annelie says, thanks, you cannot wait. But Caroline, thanks so much. Can we do the screen sharing bit, please, Neil? I just want to hand over the screens and I'll take up mine if I can find it. Neil, will you just, there we go. Just the last thing, Neil, whilst we're waiting. So I've got it.
Caroline.
Okay, Seth, but take up. Thanks, Neil, appreciate that. And let's just get it. Sometimes it takes me a day, but I hopefully can do that in a minute today. I'll switch that off. How is that? All good, Neil? So yes, thanks so much, Caroline. Just to continue, what we had was last month's theme, we had, what do you think before takeoff, which was discuss, and this month we want to zoom into change in season, which the equinox, thanks Carl for that. So let us focus on the pre-flight, that's the part I got to talk about. So yeah, I've consulted quite a few people and I read up, I had to see what can I come up with to make sure. The one thing that is definitely clear is it doesn't matter what is in here, it's for any type of aircraft, light aircraft, balloons, helicopters, military, airline aircraft, doesn't matter. Spring flying, dust off the rust. So let's get back into the air. And before we do that, let's just step one back. I always remember when you said, let's get out there in the military, we said, kick the tires and light the fires. Yes, that is true, but that's a maverick thing. You know? That's not, otherwise your tires start burning, and that's what it might look like, and your aircraft is somewhere in between. So yes, rather pull out the pre-flight checklist. It's not the easy way out. And you hear there, oh, Maverick calling Houston, we have a problem. And that's probably what Houston is going to say. Well, 1215, thanks, good day. Or pull out your checklist if you don't have anything. So when it comes to pre-flight, the one thing I really enjoyed is this prepping your plane for spring flying. Now, in certain countries, it's a different thing. Spring flying for us to spring flying in the States, very different. So I tried to pick the things that's still very valid for, doesn't matter where you are. So we had a cold winters, that is so. So now that it's slowing thaws away, which is a nice English word, reminded it's time to prep our airplanes and get back into the sequence of events is maybe the best word I can explain. Prepping your airplane, any pilot with his or her wings knows preparing a plane after a period of inactivity is one of the most important times to conduct a thorough maintenance checklist and a pre-flight, okay? Maintenance checklist, I would seek technical advice and assistance, but for sure, if you pull that aircraft out of the winter socks, at least it needs at least that, and then also a thorough pre-flight. So pre-flight inspection, now please, I'm not going to assault your experience to try and tell you how to do a pre-flight, not at all. Each aircraft is different as well. Some you go left, some you go right, depending on the aircraft. Most of the time, I remember all the flight times I've flown, you go right around. But that's not the point. The point is just know your pre-flight inspection. What we try and want to get out, and we'd like to your comments as well, what are the things pertaining to, especially to spring? So let's move on and let's ask the question, what do you think? What are the aspects that we should particularly pay attention to if we don't mention it? A very quick video just to lighten the mood.
Welcome to Friendly Skies Films. Today we're going to be going over how to pre-flight an airplane. Make sure that there's no bird's nest inside of any of your air inlets or your exhaust. Next, make sure that your horizontal stabilizer is free and that your trim tab moves in the correct direction. This is going to be different between a Piper and a Cessna. You want to make sure that the tail cone doesn't have any birds living in it. When you first open up your engine compartment, you're going to want to make sure that there are no bird's nests in it and that there isn't oil spilled over your machinery. You're going to want to check your oil amount. Before you hop in the plane, give everything one last once over to make sure that everything looks good.
Well, that's just a little inset, and I edited the videos just to have some nice music in the background as well. Now that I have your attention, so I've used quite a few resources to CRM user resources to try and get into this topic. But what I love about this one is the short answer is let's concentrate on the pre-flight. Who's responsible for you are? I mean, you're the commander. Can you delegate it? For sure you can delegate. Remember, in safety, you can delegate responsibility, but you cannot delegate accountability. So don't shirk this responsibility. It's not just your life you are putting at risk. And I think if you keep that in mind, and this is the way we go out, and when you walk to the aircraft, you can really start a good pre-flight and see what's going on in the surroundings. So understanding how these, how it is and what to do is important, is actually doing it. The question that comes arise, and it arises, it's from IOPA, is the key to a good pre-flight is understanding what you are checking and why you're checking. You're not just checking the wings are there and the wheels are there. But I think most of you are very, very happy with that you know what you're doing, of course. So you must know what is normal, what's abnormal, what is airworthy, and what is not. It comes down to two things, safe and legal. And if it's not safe and legal, you can't get to number 3, which is enjoy it while you're doing it. When we speak about going out to the aircraft, I think a good thing is, even in the hangar, let's start looking at the paperwork, and whether it's your aircraft or it's a hired aircraft. I think when it's a hired aircraft, it's even more important because you will know less about the aircraft. Repairs and preventative maintenance, it's repairs that have been put into hold. Now's the time to do it. And just incidentally, I would like to show you, when the video goes out and you would like to use the presentation and have more information, I have put it down here in the, I think they call it the presenter notes. Okay, but for tonight's presentation, I'm purely trying to pick up things that's important when we go to spring. There's a lot of information out there, so change the oil and check the fuel system. That's a good thing. I mean, you change your car, your vehicles, well, why not your aircraft as well? Check the fuel system. So important to do a spring oil change and a fuel system check. Remove the filter. Let me just show you again. Everything has got a lot of information should you need more information on it. So what to do? And I've seen many guys are really very good with their pre-flights, and it's nice to see that. There are a lot of things that you have to check. The battery at 50 hours, somebody mentioned that it doesn't last longer than that. I'm sure if you look after it can. The tire pressure and wear, wings, fins, propellers, landing gear, rotors, what is that thing for the helicopter, and any structural damage. This is interesting, where they mentioned that your aircraft might be stored. A lot of times we share hangars. Your aircraft might be stored, or, depending where it was, when you take the aircraft out, check for any structural damage. When you go and rent a car, first thing they do and you do is you walk around the car. And it's even more important than an aircraft, because the car you can stop on the road anywhere. Interesting one, and I like this one, is show it some TLC by a proper wash. Now, this is my son when he took his first student solo. That's the way they proper wash. So yeah, rinsing the instructor and the student, I don't think you can lose that. It's just added value for tax. And that's what they had to say. Interesting that I found as well that inadequate pre-flights result from either insufficient training or complacency. Now, sometimes I think it could be insufficient training and or complacency. And why would pilots be complacent? Pilots are not usually complacent, I hope. Well, I don't, in my opinion, they're not. But for instance, you have this removal of locking and safety devices. I mean, there we go flying, and your tow bar is still attached. No, maybe you can reason, well, if you land at another airport, at least you got your tow bar with you. That's if you're still there. And I think the problem here is most probably the one of rushed to get back into air. Yes, can't wait to go and fly. And then things like this happens. Look at that pitot tube. It's well covered. So yeah, nothing else can get in there, neither can the air get in there. So if you remember this, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And we have a saying that moving fast is rushing. It's reckless, can be potentially fatal. However, if you move slowly, carefully and deliberately, you're actually moving as fast as you can without needlessly increasing the risk on your life. I had to read that because that's too much for me to remember. And that is so true. So slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Remember that. No fuel, no go. It's as simple as that. And it's amazing. Easy to say there on the ground. Yes. Yeah. Will you really do it? Everybody that's had an accident, not everybody most. Yes, I'm sure there was fuel in the aircraft. More about this and about the next slide. Carl, I see you listening, and thanks so much. When you sent me your ideas, you said, if your flight, make sure your flight is already planned for whatever the mission is up that you have to do the day. And I realized, amazing, we see pre-flight as this aircraft, they're going to do pre-flight. Coupling to the theme we had last month is what do we think before we go fly? So even before you leave home, you're going to fly today. Even before you get to the aircraft, your pre-flight should also be, am I prepared? Am I ready? And Ari mentioned that as well. I've mentioned it before. Maida is very big on this as well, is, am I ready to fly? Have I pre-flighted myself? So just a nice other angle, and I like this, thanks, Carl, to think about pre-flights, not only the aircraft. Pre-flight your surroundings, pre-flight the weather. Lauren has showed us how to do that. Pre-flight your S&R options, which we did last month. So that's a nice way of putting the whole pre-flight thing into context. Getting back to the aircraft, amazing, yeah, Carl also mentioned fuel balance. And this is something I never thought about, but if you refuel the aircraft and you come there the next day, as much as a 2-degree slope might lead that the aircraft wing from the high to the low wing, the aircraft can cipher through. And I actually want to get the right wording for this, and go to the lower wing side and might even have overflows, especially if the aircraft was refueled the day before. Now you're happy, you've refueled the aircraft, you've done it yourself. Guys, assume. I can tell you what assume means, but you write it down, I'm sure you know. Then there's also the old tire condition. Many times it's mentioned, these tire conditions. I think the only excuse here, and I saw the Russian fighters when they visited here in South Africa, they came to the squadron. We gave them mosquito nets. That's how bad the tire conditions were. But that's their tires. They're different than our tires. So make sure your tire condition is right. For instance, it's been standing in one place for a long time. Old flat spots, you know, guys like Hamilton and Verstappen and those, they know what a flat spot can be. Propeller check, interesting here as well. Ensure the prop does not touch the ground by wear on the tips, even if a mine escape can cause a fatal blade separation. And that's when the pilot starts sweating if the blade starts running away, and that you don't want. And if the prop is a variable pitch type, Carl mentions here, check the blade fore and aft in the hub. So a lot of little things that we need to do and check, and we're not trying to be pedantic. I mean, these things are lifesavers. Right, now that for a prop, it still looks like a brand new prop, but still worthwhile inspecting it. Yes, I can almost hear the pilot think the aileron removed, so it must be rigged correctly. Okay, how many times you've seen this? That not many times, but you know, the aileron is free movement that you can check, but you cannot see what the other aileron is doing. And remember that lady in the video also mentioned your trim tab on the elevator. Each aircraft is different, so you have to know what you're doing and know what you're looking for. That was also mentioned. And I think those were quite important. So another thing that's amazing, wildlife loves aircraft too. I think that whole video I just cut around the parts about the birds and what they can do, because they love aircraft. Reptiles love it, rodents, all these creepy crawlies, they all love aircraft. You can't blame them for that. The question is, who's going to go fly first, the chicks or the aircraft? Poor chicks, disadvantage here because they're not even born yet. So yeah, we've seen this. We've seen these things, the birds and the bees, not the ones that we know. And this is an aircraft that's been standing, maybe not even for long. They love to hide in the aircraft. The bees, Manipito tube, it's lovely, especially if you come back and it's warm. It's been standing for a long time. Most probably it's got a whole nest in there. The family's moved in, the in-laws, everybody's in the Pito tube. Little things that can make a big difference. Rodent prevention. I just love this. Imagine that Cessna's parked there. Is it Carl? I see it's a 195, so I don't want 70. So not as smart. But those are little things that are tips for you to what to do. I'll never forget, we once came to an aircraft with cheetah D's many years ago. And we have the cooling house onto the long nose, all the cooling runs into there. And when the ground crew took off the cooling house, there's about an 8-meter python in that aircraft. Yeah, in the nose, and couldn't get it out. Obviously, we didn't go and fly. Slangs are not my favorite. But anyway, there's also this. Snakes fly from Australia to Scotland. This is how far this python flew with them. Because they love aircraft, so something to bear in mind. Anyway, that's about all I want to say, because it's the big decision. Is the aircraft safe and legal to fly right now? And it's your call. And you have to make that call. And remember that you've got other people's lives in your hands. So make sure that it's your call. Even if you go and fly on your own, always other people involved. So the go, no-go decision, it's ultimately up to the commander. And just when you think you've catered for everything, what can go wrong? So in conclusion, aviation is intolerant of mediocrity. And there's a nice saying as well, like the sea, it's inherently not dangerous, but unforgiving for those who make mistakes. So let's make sure the inspection's the best opportunity. Make sure you do the pre-flight. It's the best opportunity to catch a potentially fatal issue before you go and fly. And also aspire to be a professional aviator. It doesn't matter what you do, where you are, in all aspects of operations. When I used to fly, when I fly as a passenger, I love to sit there and watch a terminal and see how the guys do their pre-flights. And I was very aware, especially there at our Tambo, when you go and do pre-flight, there are actually many eyes watching you. But that's not what I'm trying to get you at. Just do the best you can all the time. You see some pilots almost do a G-check around the aircraft, and others just walk around, they still jump over the FOD, they don't pick it up. And those are not, they just don't look professional. We owe it to the community, to our passengers, to be professional pilots. Well, thank you so much. If there's any more suggestions or any questions, thanks, and keep rolling in. And with that, I'll have a look at the chat and the questions and answers. I'd like to hand over to Lieve Sankey, and Sankey doesn't need any introduction. It's so nice to have her still around. And she's a bron van inspiratie. It's the nicest Afrikaans I can use. Sankey, thank you. Let me just stop share. Over to you.
Kobus,
Yeah, Annelie.
I've got some news.
Yes.
Sankey has lost connection on internet, so I'm not sure if we can blame it on COVID or just technology issues. Yes, Sankey back again. But Caroline did offer to go through Sankey's presentation with all of us. So if everybody's okay with that, then let's roll.
Okay,
Sankey's back.
Thank you.
Oh, thank goodness. Over to you, Sankey.
Hi, Sankey.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody, and thanks very much for your patience. I don't know what's wrong with this internet tonight. It doesn't want to play the game. So obviously we're talking about spring flying and dusting of the rust. And I think when we haven't flown so much during winter and we get into spring, maybe we need to just look at emergencies and when to ask for help and where to get it when we need it. And I think asking for or the type of emergencies, you know, sometimes we must look at different things that would be good to advise the ATC if you have, you know, problems flying. Next slide, please. So people loss of radio contact for us is, although there's procedures to follow, it's one of those things that that an ATC really needs to know. And I can tell you a million war stories of how we've been searching for people when they've lost radio contact and we could not establish it back, and they were required to have radio contact. So when you've got loss of radio contact, please squawk accordingly so that the ATC knows that you've got a problem with your radio. Next slide, please, Neil. Then something that we sometimes forget, if you're unable to follow the correct track or maintaining the correct flight levels, people, that is something that ATCs look at and they get concerned. So that can be seen as an emergency as well. So don't be scared to talk when you are not able to follow your correct track or maintain your correct flight levels as required by ATC. Next slide. When you're not in normal communication, we've talked about it, whether it's radio failure or you just sometimes you sit and you talk to your co-pilot or to your pack and you forget to be on the correct frequency. That to us is a problem as well. But if there's radio failure, people squawk 7600. That's why the radar systems today, modern radar systems, are actually made to tell people. It makes an alarm and it tells us that you've got a problem and we need to watch you. Next slide. Unable to use appropriate navigation aids. And we actually had, when I was still the ARCC chief, we had a lady that could not dial into Golf Alpha Victor, and it was so difficult. She was so lost, and it was a problem. So people, if you are unable to use appropriate navigation aids, please tell the ATC so that he knows how to deal with you and get you back safe on the ground. Next slide. If you experience navigational difficulties, please tell your ATC and report it so that they can watch you and take care of you. And as I said, these are the things that we sometimes forget about. You always think about technical difficulties and radio failure and all those things. And we forget about these things that can also be reported because it can develop in critical emergencies. Next slide. And this is probably the one that scares me the most, is when you're experiencing hazardous weather conditions. And Lauren has said so much about it, and Neil Kobus has said so much about it, and Caroline has said so much about it. People, please go and check those weather patterns. And if I look at the weather now versus 10 years ago, our weather patterns has really, really changed. And I don't know for what reason, but I think we need to go and look at what is a microburst, what is turbulence, the clouds, and what is the effects of weather when we are flying, and just brush up on that again, because we can really get seriously hurt in bad weather conditions, and it's unnecessary. For me, any pilot, we don't have to lose more lives ever again. For as long as I live, please look at these things. Next slide. Okay, and then if you are experiencing impaired operating efficiency or technical difficulties, although it's not to the extent that the flight cannot be completed, please talk to your ATC and report it to them, because then they can watch you and make sure that you are safe on the ground, or get safe on the ground. Next slide. Remember the emergency codes. Do not wait. Make that call to your ATC and squawk 7776 or 7500, depending on your emergency. People, it's not a sin, or don't be scared of the paperwork. The sooner the ATC knows that you're in trouble, the sooner he can notify the relevant search and rescue centers, and the sooner people can be there when you are in need. Next slide. Once again, fly safe, stay safe, and if you need a guardian angel, phone me. I will fly with you. Thanks very much.
Well, Shanky, thanks so much. I just thought for a while that, we want you to just end up with that powerful presentation, but when to ask for help. Now, we were asking for help and we almost weren't there, but thanks for coming back to us. Anyway, guys, very quick, if I may look at the questions and the things that is coming. Thank you, team. Let me just track back a little bit. I saw Carl mentioned that, I don't know how you experience the sound. It would seem like the sound is not that great. Unfortunately, there's something, okay, it's done now, but we'll have to have a look and see how we can improve that. I don't know, Neil, how you guys had the sound, but Carl certainly had a problem with that. Otherwise, it was all fine. Just catch up, here we go. Sorry, I'm just paging through. Caroline's also answered some of the questions. Thank you, Caroline. Say thanks, 16 years old. Yep, keep on dreaming. Another year and you can start flying. Carl, yeah, we'll have a look at that. Unfortunately, that's one thing that we don't have much control over, but we have to fix it, so I'll do that. Nice one, Manu. Caroline, Carol mentioned already. Sankey, we got back. Neil's up. Yeah, also flying during a storm can be dangerous, for sure. I think if you do your what we call free time utilization is another word for recreational flying, there's no need to go flying to a storm. And airline flying is a little bit different, but at least you're a little bit better equipped as well. Paul Bludek mentioned something quite nice. A head clear shoutout can be equal to prop clear, which we use before you do your actual pre-flight to help make sure your head is not preoccupied with non-flight thoughts. Wow, Paul, that's nice. All this says now, guys, I don't know if you heard that. Head clear before you walk under that wing. I've been there, done that, walked into a wing, and to many things as well. These Peter Tube I've done too. A nice score. Let's see if there's anything else. Hearing, that's fine. Hearing, we could sort it out. Carl, thanks. He has to leave, but thanks for team. He also thanks you for your the commitment and to be commended for this. No, so far, Carla said, thanks so much. Enjoyed the presentation. So the rest is always, so Andrew mentions here, it sounds like many of the questions are to panelists only, so with the rest of us not always seeing them. That's why I'm trying to read them. Andrew, I hope it helps. You're 100% right. I'll go through the questions as well. Corné, dankie ook dat jy bygewoon het. Thanks for your visiting as well. Now, let me quickly have a look at the questions. There we go. If that helps you. Christian Sell, Jochie, so nice to hear from you again. He asked, confirm government is obliged to provide SNR if an aircraft is reported missing, even if SAR 0 was fine. I know it's automatic whilst in controlled airspace or non-arrival at a manned airport. Jochie, I recall Jochie from being in ATC at Windhoek. And Saiki answered, thanks Saiki, yes, in terms of Annex 12, yes it is. And then Christian also, Jochie also asked me, would you know if maintenance on aircraft that have been parked for a long period of time need to be done by a certified AMO, or can it be done by any engineer? I know CAO certificate of approval need to be issued prior to the operation. I'm not sure. I said to Jochie, you see, he's already emailed me. I think that the period of time, that is a determining factor. I don't know if somebody on the panel has got an answer on that. Maybe you, Caroline. I'm not sure.
Not sure, Kubus, but sure we can find out.
Yes, Jochie has already sent me an email, and I'm sure that, of course, there needs to be an or engineers, maybe the wrong word, but a mechanic type, somebody that's qualified and certified to do the pre-flight, the technical pre-flight. But if it's been there for longer than a certain period of time, I'm sure only then the AMO would be in the question. But I will answer Jochie on that one. So thanks so much. I see there's one more question. Now we've answered that one in the chat. Renelle, thank you for listening in. It's always there and always listening. Always appreciate that you're with us. I don't see any more questions or any more tips for the evening, but thanks so much for the one. Also, heads up. I think heads up, when you fly Cherokee, it's maybe a different, legs up or legs down. Careful on that. So from me, Neil and Annelie and the team, thanks so much for hopefully what is an evening that somebody's learned something. We will put this up onto the websites. Annelie will tell you about it. And we appreciate your help and your attention to safety. Walter, thanks to you too. And with that, thanks so much from my side. Annelie and Neil, can I hand back to you?
Robert, thanks, man. And thank you to all our speakers for their efforts in preparing for tonight. And really the purpose is about keeping everybody safe and by being better prepared and for dusting off the rust. Yeah, just to everybody that joined tonight, if you want to view an old webinar, please head to www.virtualaerosouthafrica.co.za, virtualaerosouthafrica.co.za, and you can view all our past webinars there. And to everybody, thank you so much for joining and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you, team. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye, everybody. Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.